Now that we've seen the final boss encounter for the surface in Hades 2, it's a good idea to talk about some strategies and tactics that you can use on the surface. I've talked to several people who've been struggling with this area in Hades 2, particularly once you get to Olympus and fight with Prometheus and beyond. This makes sense since you can't get to the surface until you've cleared the underworld several times and done lots of different dialogue events. I've put together 5 ideas for you to help with your progression through the surface zones. And just to be clear, most of these will also work with the underworld, but they are even more important on the surface where things are more difficult. The first tip is to bring your favorite weapon aspect and slap on Demeter. Demeter's freeze is so strong because it gives you a little bit of breathing room. It might not be the best damage in the world, but especially if you are getting the bonus from origination, you can do a ton of damage with it. My advice is to get Demeter on your attack and then something like Apollo or Aphrodite on your cast. This provides you with even more defense, days from Apollo or weak from Aphrodite. The second tip is a bit of a follow-up to the first one, and it's to get Demeter's infusion boon. This boon makes it so you only ever take 20 damage at most from any one attack. This means that some of those huge attacks are not so scary anymore, and you'll end up with way more health. In addition to this one, I'd say try to build up a health pool that's around 250 by the time you get to Prometheus. Obviously, you can build it up with Centaur hearts, but there's other ways to get more health as well, with Aphrodite boons and Hephaestus boons. Third tip, and maybe you've tried this already, but don't forget about your defensive keepsakes. Things like the fig leaf are great if you're struggling and losing death defiances in the rooms leading up to the boss, but not so much from the boss himself. Then you can use Skelly's tooth or Odysseus's keepsake to give you a bit more health and damage mitigation from the boss. The fourth tip is to try out different builds with your cards. I've gotten into ruts several times with Arcana cards, but they keep updating what these do, so make sure to give new things a try. Okay, so I wanted to talk about some of these cards and give you some ideas maybe if you haven't tried these before. There's so many different ways that these can be arranged, and I think sometimes you get into this rut where you think that there's only one way to ever, have a good build with your cards, but now you can have a lot of different permutations of the cards, and that kind of gives you a lot of freedom to try different things out. And so I highly recommend it. One thing to do, if you've never tried it before, is to go for a judgment run. Now you can get a lot of good things with judgment. I think there's a few different ways to play it. You're basically just allowed to have 3 cards activated, but with that you can actually get quite a bit of grasp. As you can see here, this one gives you is 14 grasp altogether. And there's a couple different ways that you could try this. I think death is not a bad way to do it, but you could actually go with strength. Strength is 50% less damage and you deal 25% more. You have no death defiances, but what you can do with this then is you can start with Athena, and Athena can give you that permanent death defiance, the stubborn defiance, I guess, if you want to reference it from the first game. And that's super, super good. And not only that, 50% less damage and dealing 25% more damage is insane. And then you have death defiances that come later on, right? So there's a good chance that either after Polyphemus or after Eris, you'll have your death defiances anyway, and you won't have lost them along the way. So this is actually a pretty solid strategy, in my opinion, is to use strength at the start, and then this death will eventually come along as you get more Arcana cards from Judgment. That's one to try. And then these other ones, I mean, there's so many different permutations, ways that you can play. Once again, you can just choose not to have death and have strength. These two are kind of like you either have one or the other, but you don't ever have neither of them. In my opinion, that would just be silly, right? If you're not going to use death, you might as well use strength because you're going to have so much more damage and damage mitigation. So make a choice about that. Try it out though. I mean, I think that this card is extremely, extremely good, and I think I'm going to be playing a lot more with strength and trying to get Athena early. Doesn't let you kind of design your build as much, but there's a few different things there that are really good. Another thing is this messenger casts momentarily make you impervious are super, super strong, and so finding ways to utilize your cast in moments where you want some damage mitigation is great. And so this gives you a little bit of invulnerability. And then if you combine that with, you know, the Furies, that's awesome for your cast. But I think, you know, if you don't, there's a lot of times where you don't actually need all of the rerolls that are available. You can make a strong build, and this just gives you a bit more extra damage. Like, I don't know, I was finding that I was sacrificing a lot to get the fates, especially, but this gives you 3 rerolls or two rerolls if you're going on the, you know, in the same god. But at that point, if you're rerolling, especially early when you really want to reroll a lot, maybe it's better to just restart the run, if that makes some sense. But yeah, there's so many different ways that you can make these work for you and make them really strong. Some of these are way better, you know, making your moves, your Omega moves faster, and also making them so everything slows down while you channel your Omega moves. And even though it's not the full duration of the Omega moves, I'm glad that they gave this back to us and took it away from the wheel, the silver wheel, because that was rough. And now the silver wheel just gives you 100 mana just flat. You put it on once and then it's with you forever. Those are some ideas for you anyway. Hope that helps. As far as pets to take, I mean, I think that they're all really good in their own way. You know, maybe the cat being one of the better defensive ones, or the polecat. They've all got good things to offer. I'd say the hawk or the bird is the most offensive one, right? Like it gives you some crit chance. But they all have a place, I guess. So I guess make your own choices based on that. 5th tip is to utilize your cast more. Maybe you're already using your cast a ton, but if you're like me, it can take a back seat to your weapon attack and special. Your cast starts out only providing crowd control and a damage burst when charged, but you can stack so many different damage sources on your cast that this thing can become one of your most high damage tools. And it's safe to use. Not only that, but origination is easy to achieve with the cast, since it can inflict several different curse types. I just want more Hera or Ares. That's what I'm going for here. Let's get a dragon. What are your tips for surviving the surface? Leave a comment below and click on this video because I think you'll learn something interesting.
Not a chance.